Can setting up our off-grid digital communication system prevent dementia? Let's take a look at this clip.
How do I prevent this? If you stay intellectually active, now this is a big one. There's something called cognitive reserve. You guys could probably figure out what that means, cognitive reserve. It turns out that people that are in intellectual positions on a daily basis or using their mind a lot tend to have a lot of cognitive reserve. They have a lot of gas in their tank. So even if they get dementia, it tends to progress a little bit slower.
What?
Yes, absolutely, right?
The statistics on Alzheimer's and dementia are absolutely alarming. 1 in 9 of us will be diagnosed with this by the age of 65, and that jumps to 1 in 3 by the age of 85, which might explain some things that are going on in the White House right now. Thankfully, we have this concept called cognitive reserve, and although the science is still a bit rocky on it, we can potentially improve our functioning lifespan by engaging in challenging intellectual activities like setting up this digital communication system. So let's dive right in and do some dementia prevention.
Well, it's fitting that we're talking about Raspberry Pi today because it's March 14th, Pi Day. Happy Pi Day, everybody. Raspberry Pi is simply the name of the computer if you're not familiar with them, and this is a single board Linux computer. There's lots of options out there. Pi is the one I went with because it seems to have the most available online troubleshooting information. The one you're looking at is the Pi Model 2, which you saw in the last video. It was working just fine, but it's so slow. The processor is at about 900 megahertz. It doesn't have onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, which is problematic. Now, if you want to make your system do a little bit more, you got to upgrade. The latest, greatest hotness is the Pi 5, and I don't care to sink the money into that, but luckily, since it's come out, the other models have come down in price. So we have the Pi Model 3B. That one works great. Processor is a 1.4 gigahertz chip with onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So these will work just fine, and in fact, they're about the same price right now if you want to buy a brand new one off of Amazon as the Pi 2, so there's really no reason to buy a Pi 2 anymore. If you're going to buy one, I recommend staying off of eBay unless you can make sure that you're getting a new one. I've found that if somebody's selling a Pi on eBay, it's for a reason. A lot of them have come with broken HDMI ports and other problems. Just maximize your chances for effectiveness and get something new. Now, better yet, we even have the Pi Model 4, and I think that's the one I'm going to go with. The processor is about 1.8 gigahertz, and it also has onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You can see the HDMI port looks a little bit different, but we've got a way around that. All of these Pis run off of a micro SD card. You should maximize your chances at success and get a premium one. Even though they're premium, they're still very affordable. The SanDisk Extreme Pro and SanDisk Ultra work great, and I'll drop a link in the show notes. Now, if you don't like Raspberry Pi for whatever reason, some people love to hate them, there's lots of other options. The Innovato Quadra is one. I figure if you know enough to hate the Raspberry Pi, you probably already have your favorite device, and you don't need any advice from me. Once you pick out the computers you want, and you've got your little SD cards, you're going to need to get the software on them somehow, which means you need to get it into your computer somehow. So some computers might require this little adapter, and then you cram that right in there. There's some USB adapters that'll work. My little computer right here has a slot just for that. Fortunately, I've got to use a little screwdriver to get it in there. Hold on. Everything we do from here on out is going to be according to this checklist that I've created for you, and I'll drop a link to my OneDrive in the show notes so that you can pick that out of there. And please check back periodically because it's very likely that I'm going to learn new things and figure out that I'm wrong on others and change it. All right, once we use our magic screwdriver to jam this thing into this impossibly tiny slot, we're going to get some error messages that I really don't care about. I'm just going to get out of my face, get out of my face. I've used this disk before on a Raspberry Pi, so it's going to have other stuff booted onto it. So I like to go down here to disk management, and this might all be voodoo. I don't know. I'm not an IT professional, but it seems to work better if I go in and I right click and I just delete the volume off that disk. Go away. Goodbye. All right. Going to do the same thing over here. Click, right click, delete volume. Sometimes it doesn't take on the first click, which is really frustrating, this part of Windows here. And yeah, new simple volume. That's what I want. I'm going to reformat it with FAT32. I might not have mentioned it before. I really don't want to go any higher than 32 gigabyte. I'm understanding that there is some differences of the formatting that you have to do with a larger than 32 gigabyte card. 32 gigabytes is going to be plenty for what we need. All right, looks like we are in business. Did it take? It will show up here as FAT32 if it took. Once it's done, and here we go. We're good. When you're done formatting your card, come back here to the checklist, and I've got a link for you to the Raspberry Pi operating system image flasher. That's going to put that operating system onto that disk. Everything boots off of that disk. So you need to come here and download it for your system. I'm using Windows to flash the card. Looks like you can do it for Mac. And oh, good Lord, I don't know how you get Linux to give you more Linux, but if you already know how to do that, you probably don't need my help. That's going to bring up this program here. I've already got it installed. We need to figure out which computer we're using. And that says it right on the board. You probably saw earlier. Now here's the latest, greatest hotness, the Pi 5. I don't have one of those. We're going to go with the Pi 4. And I've got to choose which operating system, and that is not so easy. Look really closely here. The new operating system that they're using is called Bookworm. I have had lots of problems with Bookworm, and maybe I'll come play with Bookworm again once they figure it out, but I'm going to stick with Bullseye, and I want the 64-bit version. So I need to click here, and I want not the light, I want the full Debian Bullseye 64-bit. That's Bookworm, 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 32-bit Bullseye, 32-bit Bullseye, light, full 64-bit Debian Bullseye. That's what I want. Now over here, I need to select my card and click Next. It's going to ask me if I want to use some customization settings. Absolutely, yes, I do. All right, so let's edit our settings. This one's going to be for my home. I've got my username and my password, and it's already configured for my wireless network. This is going to hook up to our Wi-Fi. It's going to be really helpful to us later on. You absolutely must select your country for the LAN settings. That's for your Wi-Fi, and give your time zone settings. For your services, we want to enable SSH and use password authentication. And I don't think I want to eject it because there's a couple other things I want to do once we're done, but it will tell me when we're done. Now I'm going to click Save, and yes, I want to apply those customization settings. And okay, yeah, of course, everything's going to be erased. Good, thank you so much. All right, this is going to take 20 or 30 minutes, so let's stop here and come back when it's done. While we're waiting for that to finish, let's look back at what we need to do differently to set up a Pi 2 or a Pi 3. So we'll go down here to Pi 2, and you'll notice that's different from the Pi 02W. That's a completely different device. It even looks different in the picture. We'll select it, and thankfully we don't have that many options to choose from, either the light or the full, and we want the 32-bit full. If we're going to set up a Pi 3, we'll select that, and you'll notice there are options for 32-bit full or 64-bit full. I don't really know if that matters on a Pi 3 for what we're doing. I've used both, and I haven't really noticed a difference. The only time I've ever had issues with a 32-bit is on the Pi 4. You won't be able to select the sound cards in FL Digi, which causes some problems. So on the Pi 4, we want to select that Debian Bullseye 64-bit full. I really don't know if it matters on a Pi 3, but if you have a better insight, let us know in the comments. All right, it's all done, and it's hit me with more of these messages that I really don't care about, but it did bring up this, and I want to find this in the boots file. We're going to look for this config text document, and you would be able to pull this up in the terminal of your Pi once you get it open and ready. But if you're going to plug this into an HDMI, sometimes these things don't put out enough power to make the HDMI work. So there's a couple things we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to force the frame width and height by eliminating these pound signs from the front of those lines. I'm also going to delete the one in front of force hot plug. This is going to make it hot all the time, give it power. And I think I'm going to do HDMI group 2 and HDMI mode 85. I only know this because I looked it up before. You can look this up as well, what that means. And this is going to essentially complement this in the terms that it forces the frame width and height. And we have a boost mode. I'm going to delete this comment pound sign and put a value of about 7 in there. I think you can go as high as 11, but you shouldn't need more than 7. We're going to save this, close it, and then we can go back up one, maybe, and eject it.
Ideally, that whole frustrating process just prevented brain damage for you instead of causing it. We're going to take the card out and slip it into the Raspberry Pi's SD card port and seat it right into place. Join me in the next episode of The Terminal Element, where we'll dive into the meat and potatoes of configuring the Raspberry Pi computer.